Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. Protecting him. From what? His gaze flickered to the boy at the fountain. From me? A bitter laugh escaped him. You really think I would have been a danger to my own son? Lily shook her head quickly. No, never, it wasn't you. She glanced around nervously as if expecting someone to be watching. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Something was off. There was fear in her eyes. Then who? He demanded. Who were you running from, Lily? She opened her mouth as if to speak, but in the next second she stiffened. Her eyes widened in alarm as she looked past Ethan's shoulder. Ethan turned sharply, following her gaze. Across the park, near the entrance, stood a man in a dark suit. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar running down his cheek. His expression was unreadable, but the way he stared at Lily, it wasn't casual. Ethan knew that look. It was the look of a predator watching its prey. Lily grabbed Ethan's wrist, her fingers cold. We can't talk here, she whispered urgently. I have to go. Ethan's jaw tightened. Like hell you do. You're not running again, Lily, not this time. Her grip on his wrist tightened. Please, she pleaded, voice desperate. Not here, not now. Ethan glanced back at the man in the suit. The guy hadn't moved, but Ethan could feel the tension rolling off him from across the park. Something was wrong. Lily wasn't just afraid, she was terrified. Ethan exhaled sharply. He didn't trust her, not after what she'd done, but this wasn't just about him anymore, it was about his son. Fine, he said, voice low, but we're doing this my way. She hesitated, then gave a small, reluctant nod. Ethan turned toward the fountain. His son was still there, playing with the water, completely unaware of the chaos unraveling around him. Ethan swallowed hard. He had a son, and now, no matter what, he was never letting him go. Ethan had spent his life making quick decisions, multi-million-dollar deals, takeovers, and high-stakes negotiations. But nothing had ever felt as urgent as this moment. Lily was hiding something, and whoever that man was, she was terrified of him. He turned back to her. We need to leave, now. Lily's throat bobbed as she swallowed. Where? My car is nearby. His voice was firm. You're coming with me, both of you. For a second she hesitated. He could see the war in her eyes, the instinct to run, just like she had 10 years ago. But this time she had something to lose. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. I don't know what's going on, Lily, but if you think I'm letting you walk away again, you don't know me at all. Her lips parted, something unreadable, flickering in her gaze. Then she nodded. Ethan exhaled sharply and turned toward the fountain. His son was still there, flicking water into the air with small, carefree hands. The sight sent an unexpected pang through Ethan's chest. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle the boy. Hey, buddy, he said, his voice softer than it had been in years. The child turned, blinking up at him. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking. The same blue eyes, the same sharp features. Ethan swallowed past the lump in his throat. I'm Ethan. What's your name? The boy hesitated, glancing at Lily. She gave a small nod. Leo, the boy finally said. His voice was clear, steady. Leo. Ethan felt something shift deep inside him. A name, a connection, a piece of him he never knew was missing. Leo, he repeated, testing the name on his tongue. That's a strong name? Leo gave a small, shy smile. I like it. Ethan felt his chest tighten. There was so much he had missed. First words, first steps, first days of school, a decade of moments he would never get back, and someone had stolen them from him. His jaw tightened, but he forced himself to stay composed. Hey, bud, he said, crouching down. We're gonna take a little ride. Your mom and I have some things to talk about. Leo frowned. Is something wrong? No, sweetheart, Lily cut in quickly, her voice warm but tense. We just need to go somewhere safe. Leo studied her, his little brows furrowing in thought. Then he nodded. Ethan stood, turning toward Lily. Let's go. Together, they walked toward the exit of the park. But as they reached the street, Ethan's instincts flared. The man in the dark suit was gone. Ethan's gaze flicked around, scanning the sidewalk, the passing cars. But there was nothing. It didn't mean they weren't being watched. He opened the back door of his sleek black SUV, get in. Lily hesitated for a fraction of a second before climbing in with Leo. Ethan shut the door, rounded the front, and slid into the driver's seat. As soon as the doors locked, he turned to her. "Start talking," he said coldly. "Who the hell are you running from?" Lily exhaled shakily, staring down at her hands. "Ethan, don't," he cut her off, his voice sharp. "Don't stall. I've waited 10 years for answers. You owe me the truth." She looked at him then, her eyes haunted, and when she spoke, her next words made his blood run cold. "If I tell you the truth, you might not forgive me." Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Might not forgive her. A decade of silence, a decade of questions. And now she was saying that? His jaw clenched. "Try me." Lily exhaled shakily, her fingers gripping the fabric of her dress. Her gaze flicked to Leo, who was quietly looking out the window, unaware of the storm building. Between his parents, Ethan caught the glance and immediately understood. "Leo, buddy," he said, forcing his voice to stay calm. "How about some music? You like music?" Leo turned to him and nodded. "Yeah." Ethan reached for the controls and turned on the radio, lowering the volume just enough so it would muffle their conversation. Then he shifted back to Lily. "Talk," he ordered. Lily hesitated, taking a deep breath. "Ethan, when I left, I didn't do it because I wanted to." His stomach twisted. "Then why?" She looked down, her fingers gripping the hem of her coat. "Because if I stayed, you would have never forgiven me for what I had to do." Ethan's patience snapped. "Enough riddles, Lily. What did you do?" She swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I betrayed you." The words slammed into him like a freight train. He went still. His fingers flexed against the steering wheel, a slow burn of anger rising in his chest. "Explain," he said coldly. Lily looked up, her eyes filled with pain. "I made a deal, Ethan." His jaw tightened. "With who?" She hesitated. Ethan's voice dropped. "Lily." She swallowed hard. "With Daniel Mercer." Ethan's blood went ice cold. Daniel Mercer, a name he hadn't heard in years, but one that still carried weight. A name that represented one of the darkest betrayals of his life. Daniel had once been his business partner, a man Ethan trusted, until he found out Daniel had been embezzling from their company. Ethan had cut him out, sued him into the ground, and made sure he would never do business in the city again. It had been one of the ugliest corporate battles in his career. And now, Lily was saying she had made a deal with him? A muscle ticked in his jaw. "What kind of deal?" Lily's voice shook. "He found out I was pregnant before I could tell you, and he threatened to ruin you if I stayed." Ethan's stomach clenched. "Ruin me?" "He wanted revenge, Ethan. You humiliated him. You destroyed his empire. And he knew that the only way to truly break you was through me." Her voice wavered. "He said if I stayed, he would bury you in scandals, accusations, lawsuits, false charges. And worse, he said he had people in high places who could make those accusations stick." Ethan's grip on the steering wheel was so tight, his knuckles turned white. "So you ran." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. "I was pregnant, Ethan. I was scared. If even one of his threats had come true, you could have lost everything. Your company, your reputation, your freedom." She swallowed. "And I couldn't let that happen." Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. He had spent years searching for her. Years. And all this time she had been hiding from him. Not because she stopped loving him, but because she thought she was protecting him. A bitter laugh escaped him, sharp and filled with disbelief. "You should have told me," Lily's voice broke. "Would you have let me go?" The question hit him hard. No, he wouldn't have. He would have fought. He would have destroyed Daniel Mercer all over again. But that didn't change the fact that she had stolen 10 years from him, stolen the chance to be a father. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, landing on Leo's reflection. Their son. His throat tightened. He turned back to Lily, his voice cold. "Mercer is gone now. He's been out of the picture for years." Lily's hands trembled. "Not completely." Ethan stiffened. Lily looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's back, Ethan. And he's looking for me." Ethan felt a sharp, cold fury settle in his chest. Daniel Mercer. Back, the man who had already taken 10 years from him. The man who had forced Lily to run, who had stolen his son's childhood from him, and now he was coming for her again. Ethan's grip on the steering wheel tightened until his knuckles turned white. "What do you mean he's looking for you?" Lily swallowed hard. "A few months ago I started noticing things. Strange cars parked outside my apartment, people watching me when I took Leo to school. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then someone broke into my place." Ethan's body went rigid. She kept going, her voice shaking. "Nothing was stolen, but I knew. It was a message. I had to leave. Again." She exhaled shakily. "I thought I was being careful. I changed cities, changed names, but it didn't matter. They still found me." Ethan's jaw locked. "And you didn't think to call me?" Lily looked away. "You were better off without me, Ethan." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Better off?" he repeated, his voice dangerously low. "Do you have any idea what you put me through? I searched for you. I never stopped looking for you." Tears welled in her eyes. "I know." "No, you don't," he snapped. "Because if you did, you wouldn't have taken my son away from me." Lily flinched, guilt flashing across her face. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the car's engine. Then Ethan exhaled, forcing himself to stay calm. There was no time for anger, not now. He turned to her, his voice firm. "Where are you staying?" Lily hesitated. "A motel. I paid in cash. We've been moving every few weeks." Ethan cursed under his breath. That wasn't going to work anymore. "You're not going back there," he said. Lily blinked. "What? You heard me?" His voice was final. "You and Leo are coming with me." Lily tensed. "Ethan, no arguments, Lily." He cut her off. "I don't care what Mercer wants. I don't care how powerful he thinks he is. You are mine." He turned to look at Leo, who was still staring out the window, lost in his own world. Ethan's voice softened, but his determination didn't waver. "And so is he." Lily's lips parted, shock flickering across her face. Ethan had always been ruthless in business, but right now he wasn't thinking like a CEO. He was thinking like a man who had been robbed of his family, and he wasn't letting them go again. She let out a shaky breath. "It's not that simple, Ethan. Mercer doesn't scare me," he said coldly. "I will end him if he so much as thinks about touching you or Leo." Lily stared at him, her eyes searching his face. And then something in her seemed to break. The exhaustion, the fear, the years of running, it all weighed down on her. Finally, she gave a small, hesitant nod. Ethan didn't waste another second. He put the car in drive and pulled onto the street, his mind already working. He needed security on them immediately. The safest place for Lily and Leo right now was his home, and once they were safe, Daniel Mercer was going to learn what it meant to cross Ethan Carter. The drive to Ethan's estate was silent, but tension hung thick in the air. Lily sat rigid in the passenger seat, her hands gripping the fabric of her dress, while Leo dozed off in the back. Ethan kept his eyes on the road, his mind racing. 10 years. 10 years of unanswered questions, of emptiness, of searching for a woman who had been hiding his son. And now, she was back. But not by choice. Mercer was after her. And Ethan knew men like him. They didn't stop until they got what they wanted, but this time he wouldn't let it happen. The gates of his estate loomed ahead. With a press of a button, they slid open, revealing the sprawling mansion beyond. The long driveway was lined with neatly trimmed hedges, leading to a modern, glass-fronted home that screamed power and wealth. Lily exhaled sharply as the car came. "Edu, a stop." "I forgot how big this place is." Ethan turned to her. "You'll be safe here." She nodded, but he could see the hesitation in her eyes. Not just hesitation, fear. Not of Mercer. Of him. He clenched his jaw and got out of the car. He wasn't about to force her to trust him, but she'd have no choice but to stay. Walking around to the back seat, he carefully unbuckled Leo. The boy stirred, rubbing his eyes. "Hey, buddy," Ethan said, his voice softer than he thought himself capable of. "We're home." Leo blinked up at him, then turned to Lily. "Mum?" Lily forced a small smile. "It's okay, sweetheart." Leo yawned, clearly too tired to ask questions, and Ethan lifted him easily in his arms. The weight of his son, the warmth of him, it did something to Ethan's chest. He had missed this. He had missed everything. Lily followed silently as Ethan carried Leo inside. The house was quiet, the marble floors gleaming under the soft glow of the chandeliers. Ethan took Leo upstairs into a guest bedroom and gently placed him on the bed. The boy mumbled something in his sleep, curling into the pillow. Ethan stood there for a long moment, watching him. Then he felt it. A presence. Behind him. Lily. Her voice was barely a whisper. "He sleeps like you." Ethan turned slowly. She was standing in the doorway, arms crossed over her chest, her expression unreadable. Something inside him cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice was low, but there was no mistaking the anger beneath it. Lily swallowed hard. "Because I knew you'd never let me go." "You're damn right I wouldn't have." His jaw clenched. "I had a right to know." "I know," she whispered. "But I was scared, Ethan. I thought I was doing the right thing." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. "And now? Are you still running?" Her gaze dropped to the floor. "I don't know how to—" "Stop." Silence stretched between them. Ethan studied her, his anger warring with something deeper, something more painful. He had loved her. God, he had loved her. And she had left him in the worst way possible. But now, the woman in front of him wasn't the same Lily he had known. She was guarded, exhausted. A mother who had been on the run for years. And despite everything, despite the betrayal, he couldn't turn his back on her. Finally, he stepped closer, his voice firm. "You're not alone anymore, Lily. You and Leo are staying here. No more running, no more hiding." She lifted her head, her eyes locking onto his. There was uncertainty there, hesitation, but something else too, a flicker of relief. Ethan didn't say anything else. He didn't need to, because from this moment on, Lily and Leo were his to protect, and Daniel Mercer was going to regret ever coming after them. Ethan barely slept that night. He sat in his office, staring at the glowing screen of his laptop, sifting through files, security reports, and anything he could find on Daniel Mercer. The man had vanished for years after Ethan ruined his empire. No business dealings, no high-profile connections. But now, out of nowhere, he had resurfaced, and he wanted Lily. Ethan's jaw clenched. "Over my dead body." A soft knock pulled him from his thoughts. Lily. She stood in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, her eyes tired but cautious. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked quietly. Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his jaw. "Not much." She hesitated before stepping inside. "Me neither." Silence stretched between them. There was so much unsaid, so much between them that had been broken and left unfinished. Finally, Lily sighed, shifting the blanket around her shoulders. "You hate me, don't you?" Ethan exhaled sharply. "I don't know what I feel." Lily's gaze dropped. "I didn't want to hurt you, Ethan." "But you did," he said, his voice edged with quiet anger. "You took my son from me." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look away. "I know, and I'll never forgive myself for it." Ethan studied her, his emotions warring inside him. He had spent years imagining this moment, seeing her again, demanding answers. But now looking at her, seeing the weight of her decisions in her eyes, he didn't just see Lily, the woman who left. He saw Lily, the woman who had survived. And that changed things. "Tell me everything," he said finally. "No more secrets." Lily swallowed hard, then sat down across from him. "I met Mercer once," she began, her voice distant. "At a gala, before everything fell apart between you two. He seemed charming, polite. But after you cut him out, he changed. He became obsessed, not just with revenge, but with power. And when he found out about my pregnancy, he saw an opportunity." Ethan's fists clenched. "He told me I had two choices," Lily continued. "Stay with you and watch him destroy your life or disappear. If I left, he promised he'd leave you alone. Ethan's stomach twisted. Mercer had used their unborn child as leverage. "He let you go," Ethan said. "But now he's back. Why?" Lily hesitated. "Because I made a mistake." Ethan stilled. "What kind of mistake?" Her hands trembled as she exhaled. "I thought he was gone for good, but a few months ago I saw him. He was in the same city at a hotel, and I panicked. I tried to leave, but I took something with me." Ethan's eyes darkened. "What did you take, Lily?" She swallowed hard. "A flash drive. He left it in his hotel room. I don't know everything that's on it, but I know it's important. It's the only reason I'm still alive right now." Ethan stared at her. "You stole from him?" She nodded slowly. Ethan ran a hand down his face, his mind racing. "Where is it now?" Lily hesitated, then reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small black USB drive and placed it on the desk. Ethan picked it up, turning it between his fingers. This was why Mercer wanted her. This was why she had been running. And now it wasn't just about Lily anymore. Leo was in danger too. Ethan looked at her, his voice unwavering. "It's over, Lily. You're not running anymore." She let out a shaky breath. "What are you going to do?" Ethan's expression hardened. "I'm going to make sure Mercer never gets near you or Leo again." "Because now?" This wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting his family, and Ethan Carter never lost. Ethan wasn't a man who acted on impulse. His empire had been built on patience, precision, and calculated risk. But tonight, as he stared at the small black flash drive in his palm, he felt something different. Rage. This wasn't just a business deal gone wrong. It wasn't about corporate rivalry or petty vengeance. This was about his son. Mercer had stolen 10 years from him. He had forced Lily to live in fear, to uproot her life again and again, always looking over her shoulder. And now he was coming for her again. No, not this time. Ethan inserted the flash drive into his laptop, his fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard. Encrypted, of course. Mercer wouldn't be careless, but Ethan had the best cyber team in the industry. A single call to his security lead, and within minutes, the files unlocked. Lily sat across from him, gripping her hands together. "What is it?" Ethan's eyes scanned the screen. His stomach tightened. Bank records, offshore accounts, transactions linked to government officials. And then he froze. A list of names, politicians, business leaders, judges, people Mercer had on his payroll. Lily sucked in a sharp breath. "Oh my God!" Ethan's mind was already racing. This wasn't just blackmail material, this was power. Mercer had been buying influence for years, and if this information got out, it would destroy him. No wonder he wanted Lily silenced. Ethan shut the laptop with a decisive click. "We're ending this tonight." Lily's eyes widened. "Ethan, what are you—" "Stay here," he ordered. "I'm calling in security. Leo stays with you." She grabbed his wrist. "You can't face Mercer alone." He looked at her, his gaze dark. "I'm not negotiating with him, Lily. I'm eliminating him." She shivered, but didn't argue. She had always known what kind of man he was, the kind who didn't lose. Ethan pulled out his phone, dialing his head of security. "I want—" Mercer found. "Now, I don't care how much it costs." The response was immediate. "We've already tracked him. He's staying at the Grand Orchid Hotel." Ethan smirked coldly. "Perfect." Grand Orchid Hotel. Penthouse suite. Mercer sat in a dimly lit room, swirling whiskey in a crystal glass. He had always been patient, always played the long game. Lily thought she had won when she stole from him. Foolish woman. He had let her run, knowing she'd eventually surface again. And she had right into Ethan Carter's arms. How poetic. A knock at the door. His bodyguard moved to answer it, but before he could react, the door burst open. Ethan Carter stepped inside. No hesitation, no words, just raw, lethal intent. Mercer. Barely had time to smirk before Ethan grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. The whiskey glass shattered to the floor. Mercer choked out a laugh. "Ah, Carter, I was expecting you." Ethan's grip tightened. "You made the worst mistake of your life coming after my family." Mercer grinned despite the pressure against his throat. "Oh, Ethan." You still think this is about you? Ethan didn't flinch. It doesn't matter what you want, you're done, Mercer chuckled. You don't get it, do you? I have connections, judges, politicians. Ethan smirked. You mean the ones on this? He pulled out the flash drive and held it between his fingers. Mercer's expression finally cracked. Ethan leaned in. This ends now. You disappear, or I destroy everything you've built. Mercer's jaw clenched. He knew Ethan wasn't bluffing. For the first time, the predator looked like prey. Fine, Mercer rasped. I'll leave them alone. Ethan's gaze was ice. Swear it, Mercer exhaled shakily. I swear. Ethan released him, stepping back. If I even sense you near them again, I won't stop at ruining you. I'll bury you. Mercer nodded once. He knew Ethan meant it. Without another word, Ethan turned and walked out. It was over. 3 days later, Ethan's estate Lily stood by the window, watching Leo play in the backyard. For the first time in years, she wasn't looking over her shoulder. She heard footsteps behind her. Ethan. She turned, her heart tightening at the sight of him. Strong, unyielding. Hers. It's over? She asked softly. Ethan nodded. It's over. She exhaled, tears glistening in her eyes. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to. He stepped closer, his hand brushing her cheek. Stay, he murmured, for good. Her breath caught. Ethan! Leo needs his mother. His fingers tightened gently. And I need you. Lily's lips parted. For 10 years, she had convinced herself that she didn't deserve him. But Ethan had never stopped fighting for her, and maybe it was time she stopped running. She let out a shaky breath, then whispered, Okay. Ethan exhaled, pulling her into his arms. She melted against him, her past finally behind her. She was home. And this time, she wasn't leaving. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to show your support. It truly helps me bring more impactful stories to you. If you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on more emotional, thought-provoking tales. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Comment below and share. What part of the story touched you most, or how it made you feel? Your feedback means the world and shapes the future of the channel. Thank you for being part of this community.